So and I can see, having a look at page 146, so you're saying, Member Taipiri, that could kind of be expanded out so that we have greater alignment and a bit more clarity in the plan for how something like this may meet some of the framework ideals that the IMSB have articulated to us.
Yes, so the board has, I mean, even through the Māori plan, there's a bunch of stuff there. So, I mean, that should have been given recognition. It's part of the schedule of issues of significance, so it is a statutory requirement, document. It is your advice that's formal from the board to council, so how to populate. But at the same breath, we should be provided the document to be able to review it, to provide advice before it comes to council, because that's what the law required. Okay. But it hasn't happened in my view. But more importantly, also from my point of view, is really understanding mana whenua and mātai waka in terms of providers, because Māori authorities or mana whenua have business within those structures. So they have companies, they have asset holding companies, whether it's a range of things, and I just don't see that. So whether it's yet to come, but I would have thought it would have been appropriate to have sent it out into the document that's going up for consultation.
Okay, we can follow that up.
Thank you.
I'm just going to ask Jim, we just had a quick little chat here, and he just wants to add to the question that you asked Councillor Quack, so just a bit of an expansion on the answer that you got back.
Yeah, I just sensed you didn't quite get the answer, or the completeness in the answer. So the team have worked together across the unitary plan, the future urban land supply and the industrial stuff. So we are working collaboratively and making sure they mesh as much as we can at this point. Our commitment long term is to make sure that they are tested hard, and so we will continue to work together in that way. And that includes working with my own transport team and Auckland Transport and thinking how the transport options mesh, because the homes versus work obviously requires the transport plan to mesh with it as well. So be assured that we will continue to make sure the teams are working collaboratively in the way that these work.
Okay. Councillor Anai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Echoing Councillor Filipina, yes, congratulations. I've consulted and listened, and you've identified clearly with the population expansion that's going out there where these areas have got to be set up and the infrastructure in place. And so I think from a planning point of view, we're doing the right thing. My concern is, will this overcome the unemployment problems that we have in the south already? It won't, because the problem isn't ours. The problem lies in the hands of the educators to make sure that our young people are educated for the job opportunities that are coming in the future out there, because that's where we're failing now. So I just wanted to add by saying congratulations on the planning that's going on, but now we've got to get the other half of the coin put in place to make sure all the work that we put in place formulates the right way. Thank you.
Okay. I'll go to Councillor Cashmore, and then perhaps if the Southern councillors would like to move. Okay, Cashmore then Wood. Councillor Cashmore.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thank you for this piece of work. A couple of questions. First of all, what has informed you about the actual movement of business and particularly industry in capacity? So how much more capacity do we have in the existing zoned lands, and what in the years and uptake do you think is left in that?
So the capacity study for that was produced by REMU has informed that sort of the future growth of our industrial areas and what supply we have. In terms of how long is left in that supply, I wouldn't be able to answer that straight off, because a lot of it does depend on the market and when the market wants to take up that land. So it depends very much in terms of what happens around the economy and how quickly our industrial land can come forward as well. And obviously, there is future supply with Drury South coming on board, as well as the current expansion at the airport and continued supply at Highbrook as well.
So Puanui and Drury South, with your indulgement, are two big future hub areas. When we look into Auckland's heavy industry, in the Penrose, only Hanga area, is there going to be, and you mentioned in your report in the appendices here about reverse sensitivity and housing intensification causing issues with truck movements, air quality, etc. So how are you going to measure that issue of reverse sensitivity and ability to retain those industries there, or those industries be forced, encouraged to move to other locales?
I think in terms of reverse sensitivity, one of the key issues for businesses from the business point of view is being able to effectively communicate the fact that they are complying, where they are complying, and making sure that they're not having to do that on a constant basis, because that's where the cost comes into them. So it's much more about educating businesses about what they can do to tell the story that they are complying, as well as outside of our heavy industrial areas, we'll hopefully get more. I think the way that the unitary plan is structured around the zonings tries to give some buffer, so that especially for heavy industry, that the sort of reverse sensitivities aren't too great on the residential population. It comes much more to other businesses and how it impacts upon them. So it's about better education to businesses about compliance and how they can let people know what they're doing to limit their impact, the impact.
All right?
That's right, Madam Chairman. Thank you for the time being. Yep.
Okay, I've got councillor Wood and councillor Walker, and then you're happy to move, councillor Filipaina.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Look, Councillor Filipaina raised the transport rate, or transport targeted rate. And I just want to say to Councillor Filipaina that we were out at, well, he raised it, we were out at Onehunga on Saturday afternoon when a big contingent of Mangere people were there from the Respect Our Community campaign, and I tell you what, they are hopping mad because they've got a 16.6% average rate increase. So, Councillor Filipaina, you want to talk to your people, they're not too happy about that.
16.9.
So,
It's 16.9.
I just want to...
Councillor.
16.9,
Yeah.
okay, so they're not happy, not happy.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just want to ask the question, in relation to those big transport projects, you've got the East-West connection and those other projects, how is this integrated into the other plans of Auckland, the agency, New Zealand Transport Agency and Auckland Transport?
So in terms of the integrated business precinct plan, how it's integrated into those?
Yeah, how's it going to be, what status and what strength would it have in relation to? Because I can think of also Drury and public transport to Drury.
So what the actions are asking for is that we work with those transport agencies to deliver those, because they will be important for businesses within the integrated business precinct plan area. So all the as far as this goes, it is just very much a case of making sure that those projects gets delivered is really what we're asking for.
Right, councillor Walker, and then we'll move on to the recommendation.
Yeah, sure. Just going over the graphs and the like, it's pretty clear that one of the major trends has been the decline in manufacturing. That's been hugely significant. And on the flip side, the dramatic increase in administration and warehousing and the like. Manufacturing generally it's often single-story stuff, particularly if it's heavy, whereas administration, warehousing increasingly is going up. That's the general trend with mechanisation and robots and all kinds of stuff, technology. So I'm just interested in really what the capacity issues are in this area, given those pretty significant changes. I mean, you could have higher rise administration buildings in this area. You could have significantly higher warehouse space, and that might help regeneration. So I don't see a lot of commentary around that. And then the other issue is also around clustering and so on across this area, and I would have thought AT would have had some comments to make around that, but again I don't see a lot about those sort of concepts that play across this area into the future.
So I think in terms of the first point around the decline in manufacturing jobs, I think we have to recognise that manufacturing is changing, So the number of jobs that we need to do things is not as great, but that doesn't mean to say that the jobs that are available in our industrial areas aren't different. So there's a lot of jobs around computer-aided design and things like that, which wouldn't necessarily be picked up in our under the manufacturing statistics. So I think what we're seeing is reflected in those statistics is the change in the nature of jobs that are happening in our industrial areas. That's not to say that they're not needed for manufacturing. They're just classified differently in some of the statistics. So a lot of it is it has to depend on how people fill in feedback forms and categorise themselves as a job that they do or the job that they're the type of nature of the product they're manufacturing. So while there is a decline in manufacturing jobs, I think the jobs available are still needed. They're just different types of jobs, but they would still need to be done in our industrial areas.
I think we have a unitary plan response.
And in terms of a capacity issue, I'm doing that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Councillor Walker, in terms of capacity in the industrial areas, obviously through the unitary plan, we looked at what an appropriate height limit would be for those types of warehouses, the stacking that you refer to. So we have a fairly generous height control in the heavy industrial areas around Penrose, Onehunga and elsewhere. That topic is subject to submissions on the unitary plan and is tracking towards a hearing fairly shortly. But, in short, we believe that we do have a fairly significant amount of capacity for those types of structures in the heavy industrial zones. So I think we're okay on that front. Considerable capacity from a height perspective.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I've got a couple more questions. Then I think we do need to move on. Remembering today that we are sending this out into the world. Councillor Walker, another quick question?
I just have a related question. I mean, essentially this has got quite a bit to do with zoning and so on. That's what I pick up. Having said that, I would have thought that there would have been more information around the visioning process and so on from ATED's perspective, something that actually sits alongside this, so that we've got a better conceptual idea of where the overall area is heading, and that is not apparent to me, just in terms of larger city planning. So I just put that.
I think that's definitely a next step in terms of how we present the industrial south. I think the integrated business precinct plan has, I suppose, started the conversation in how we see the industrial areas in South Auckland. Up until now, they've been seen as very different, separate industrial locations, and what we've tried to do is actually look at them as a whole. So I think in terms of taking that discussion forward with ATED around how do we attract businesses into our industrial locations, that's the next step, and one of the actions around marketing and promoting the industrial south as a place to do business in.
And I think have a look at page 132. I think it gives us an idea of where some of that work will happen, Councillor. Okay, let's have a question. Councillor Quacks and then Councillor Stewart, and then we'll put the recommendation.
Yeah, no, Madam Chair, I don't need to ask.
You're all good? Councillor Stewart.
Oh, thank you. Just over the weekend I was driving around some of the heavy industrial areas, and one of the things we keep hearing is that there's a shortage of industrial land in Auckland. But one thing that I noticed is a lot of the existing industrial land is actually up for lease and vacant. So I just wondered whether we have such a shortage of industrial land, because when you're driving around, that's all you see. You just see all these buildings, and then a lot of very old industrial buildings that haven't got anything very much sort of. Have you got any statistics on that, or do you really think we have got such a shortage when, is what I've just said?
I think from the work that's been done around with CBRE and people like that, you know, they're definitely signalling that there's a shortage of supply of industrial land. So I think that's where we've taken that from, and that I think that's fed into the capacity studies and things like that have been done as well. So in terms of what the market's telling us, it's saying that there is a shortage. I think what we have to look at is where we have those vacant lots that are up for lease. How long have they been up for lease for? And you know, you might find that they're actually turning over quite quickly in terms of occupants.
And I think that's some of the work that was signalled in here, is making sure it's the right kind of properties for the right sort of business and industrial futures that we've got coming at us. Okay, last word, Councillor Penrose.
I just want to say, Madam Chair, that we have a massive shortage of 4, 6 and 8 hectare sites across the region. Actually, in fact, we've got nothing. Exactly. Nothing. And we've only got 2A and 2B in the Tackling area that's available at the moment. I've mentioned around this table numerous times. The problems we have is transport.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Just number Taipere.
Just a question, Madam Chair. Just picking up from saying earlier that I think that it was very light and that I think more work needs to be done, and yet there's a vote to implement the strategy. Is a process available for continuing review of the strategy? What is the situation?
Do you want to respond, Jim?
I think it'll be enriching through the next phase, and I take on board your need to be involved in that. So, but I think we have it to a level now. We're going out now and working to get that hardening up and maturity of it is at the right phase. So I think it is the right time to go, but acknowledging that it's still got to be with the feedback completed or hardened up.
Yeah, I think if you have a look in there, and I stand to be corrected, I don't think there's anything in there that precludes, once we're implementing, that precludes exactly what the Independent Māori Statutory Board are asking for, which is can we do some work on and expand out the component for Māori business and economic outcomes. If that's what you're asking for, that's probably
Check.
exactly what needs to
Got
be
that,
done.
Madam Chair?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Order's got it.
Okay, kia ora. Right, we've got moved and seconded. I'm going to put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried.